We're going to talk about this, which is the U.S. border collapse. So the globalist plan to have the U.S. border collapse is happening right before our eyes. It's all part of a plan, and everything does change in a few days here. And Biden is going to let this happen on purpose on the 21st of December. Title 42 expires that day, which is a COVID-era law, of course, put in place by President Trump, which would let authorities quickly process and deport illegal immigrants coming across the border. The Border Patrol says, so get this number is out today. This is an astonishing number. The Border Patrol says that when Title 42 ends, they will likely see 14,000 arrests per day. And it's going to overwhelm them. 14,000 arrests per day. How are they going to handle that? The answer is they're not. 14,000 arrests per day. And now that's why a number of governors, Republican governors, are coming forward. This week, 19 Republican governors begging to keep this law in place. These 19 governors filed an emergency legal request to try to delay the termination of Title 42. Now, remember, a court in D.C. found Title 42 to be unlawful. So now these 19 governors are basically appealing that decision, calling it emergency. That means unless it is paused, this lower court will require border officials to halt the illegal immigration expulsions until on December 21st. So, you've got freezing temperatures, guys, right? I mean, we're about to get hit with this like Siberian blast. By the way, isn't this like a big FU from Putin? Because this cold,
I'm sure it is.
This cold air is coming from.
And if you act like you're cold, you're supporting Putin.
Right.
So don't do that.
If you play with snowballs, Putin wins. So this wind is coming from Siberia. Don't touch.
We built the pipeline that goes from Siberia to Alaska on Sarah Palin's property.
So don't touch Snowball. If you touch Snowball, I win. Do not touch Snowball. But drink vodka. So yeah, this is right. This is the Siberian cold blast is about to hit and totally freeze the United States. So despite these frigid temperatures at night, these people coming across the border right now, they're freezing as it is, and these illegal immigrants continue to come by the thousands, tens of thousands. Take a look.
Under intense pressure to act, the Department of Homeland Security now says it's deploying more agents amid the new migrant influx. Overnight, we saw an even larger group lining up to get into El Paso.
It's right before dawn, and the conditions here are miserable. With the wind chill, the temperature here feels like it's below freezing. The Border Patrol is letting 10 to 15 of these migrants in at a time, but the line stretches all the way down there.
Some are then released onto the streets of El Paso to fend for themselves. This couple from Nicaragua made the decision to cross now because they expected more chaos at the border next week.
Yeah. So Nicaragua, just for a moment, put a pin in Nicaragua. We're going to come back to that in a second. So remember Nicaragua. So a new video just released a few moments ago showing Mexican police literally escorting caravans of migrants right to the border so that they can cross the border and then become illegal immigrants. So they're literally driving them with police escorts. Look at this afternoon. So what you'll see here on the top of your screen is a police escort with busloads of people being escorted by Mexican police right to the border. Like, here you go. Here's the entrance. Go ahead. Because, they're not Mexicans. Mm-hmm. They're Guatemalans.
Yeah.
They're Nicaraguans. So they're coming into Mexico. Mexico doesn't want it either. Here, we're leading you right there, right to the border with police escorts. See the police? Right there. So that's, yeah.
That's shocking.
So why aren't they doing anything to stop it? Well, Nancy Pelosi has got this totally covered, as you can imagine. Nancy Pelosi today was, there for her unveiling of her portrait to be hung. So they were all there for the big portrait ceremony and then press conference, and Nancy answering a few questions. Nancy, will Congress do anything to stop this humanitarian nightmare in the United States? Here's her response.
Should the administration extend Title 42, do you think the border is secure enough to possibly handle an influx in migrants that we could see?
Well, to secure our border is our responsibility. We always can do more. So we say enough by what standard. But the courts have spoken on that subject. There's not going to be anything happening in this Congress as we go out, because we've been through the course now. I do like talking about immigration, though, because it is the constant reinvigoration of America.
Oh, that's nice. So literally, she said, we're not going to do anything, but I like to talk about it. Oh, so that's nice.
We're not going to do anything about it.
It sounds like she basically. Like she basically just blamed the fact that they lost the House. So the Republicans is like, we would have done something about it, but now that's run its course. So
yeah, we went through the course. Yeah. We tried it. We went through that parkour course. Yeah, we've been through it. You know.
So, I mean, that's
but
nothing.
I like talking about it because it's the reinvigoration of America, she says. It's the reinvigoration of America. So the 14,000 people coming across the border every day is a reinvigoration of America.
With what resources to take care of them?
That's the point, right? There is no resources to take care of these people. So this is a humanitarian crisis, right? The idea that we're inviting them across and not doing anything to help them at all. So
clearly.
Well, that's not true in every case, because they're shipping them to all these other cities where somebody's taking them in and they're getting taken care of somewhere. We're not seeing an influx of them being homeless anywhere. Not that I've seen.
Well, in El Paso,
they have to be getting.
Yeah, and in California, but yeah, if they are being shipped off and they're being sent to like Minneapolis or other places, like we saw in Nantucket and we saw Martha's Vineyard, right?
Yes,
and then they end up winding up in homeless shelters and YMCA shelters and other places like that. This is no way to, So,
I mean, you do see American cities sort of bursting at the seams from all manner of underprivileged people, regardless of skin color. This is sort of, you think about like you fill something to its brink and there are not enough resources to reinforce it. There is a homeless crisis. These things do create a crisis because clearly she's not saying, well, these are human beings. We just have to work harder to take care of them. No. Who she wants to take care of is Vladimir Zelensky. She's clearly not worried about the resources or those people coming. She's worried about the legislation. And when faced with the question, but what about these people? She only deflected to politics, she didn't respond to that as a human being.
Right. And Americans who can't pay their energy bills right now and who don't have health care and who President Biden earlier, a number of months ago saying that we want to give health care to the illegal immigrants. When Americans don't have it. And we're going to send $100 billion to Zelensky. So this is why people are so desperate and fed up with these people. They're fed up with these globalists. And this is all part of a plan. Go ahead, David.
I was just going to say, and again, this is like, in what she's saying, this is, again, Putin's fault because they have to send so much money to Ukraine, $120 billion at this point, plus that they could have used for this crisis for like even if they would have taken $5 billion and applied it to this process or to this problem, could have had some solutions. But because of Putin's liberation or invasion, as they call it, they have to send all that money over there instead. So thanks, Putin, for the. And we're concerned
about Ukraine's border, but we're just not concerned about our own border.
Right.
So the reports
are the Polish border.
Or the Polish border. Reports are that this is 5.5 million unvetted illegal immigrants showing up with cash cards and money from the United Nations and the U.S. Reports are that they have cash cards. They've got like we're providing them with this. So they're coming across the border stocked up with like a debit card, like one of those Visa cards that we're giving out. What? And they
already had when they left, or they're getting it at the border?
I don't know.
Well, whatever it is.
They're coming across the border with them in their hands. And where are they getting them from?
But it's clearly not enough to come and like make a life.
No.
It's nothing, right? And so
but it's making it worse, right? You're inviting them across and you're giving them and you're giving them cash cards. Like it's unbelievable. Instead of
I've also heard cell phones.
Yes, that too. So they're coming in from around the globe because this administration is allowing this invasion. One governor who just doesn't get it is Gavin Newsom. He went to the border and is thrilled with how great all of this is. Watch.
Back from Mexicali, which is on the other side of the border, while I had the opportunity to meet with the governor and meet with some international humanitarian leaders, as well as many migrants from Haiti, from Guatemala, and from parts of Mexico that are waiting for their asylum processing right here at the border. So we're here now on the other side in Calexico, and here just to get an understanding, a deeper understanding of what the world looks like pre Title 42 and what it likely is going to look like in a few weeks post Title 42.
So this is all part of the plan, and he says, Newsom claims that, by the way, he didn't meet with any overwhelmed border patrol. No one. They just went to these processing centers, but no border guards. So you can see how overwhelmed they are. No, he didn't do that. So Newsom claims California invested $1 billion to secure our border, which is laughably untrue. California is a sanctuary state, so it has opened its border in just about every possible way, right? So you've invested $1 billion to stop it? That's not true. Award-winning independent journalist Lara Logan, who was recently deplatformed for telling the truth and dropping a bombshell story that she says that from a United Nations whistleblower, she explains that this is all part of a plan. If you missed this, I want to play this for you. Watch.
Is the border of the United States not only not secure, but is there definitionally an invasion of this country, ma'am?
The border is wide open because we are living under a globalist policy of open borders. So there is no border security to speak of. Weapons are flowing across, drugs are flowing across, people are flowing across, money is flowing across, illicit funds, and so on and so on. I mean, everything that comes with an open border is what's flowing.
So she lays out how this is all part of a globalist plan to undermine the border security and to make basically North America as one unit. We're already seeing this with the World Cup, right? The next World Cup is going to be the North American World Cup.
Yes.
So I'm going to play more of what she had to say here because it is jaw-dropping. So here's the second one. Listen.
And the reason it's happening, Steve, it's not just an invasion. It is an invasion, but an invasion that is part of a long-term plan and political ideology to obliterate the sovereignty of this nation and change the way the world looks forever. It's not just America's sovereignty that's on the chopping block. It's sovereignty all over the world. It's just that this is the place that is the light and the guide for the whole world.
So here's where she starts to lay out what actually unfolds with this UN whistleblower. And I'm going to play two more from her because they're very, very important. Watch.
And what I learned from a source who is a very unique source, having infiltrated the globalist cult at the UN level, is that he was in high-level meetings that required a number of security clearances where they actually discussed the plan to bring 100 million people into the United States in order to pave the way for a regional government of U.S., Canada, and Mexico.
So a regional government. So get rid of the borders, and then here is the piece de resistance, the final I want to play from her. Watch.
And that was to bring in 100 million people from Latin American countries together with a strategy of creating these cartels, making life unbearable. It's called a push-pull strategy, where they push all these people out of these countries where it's unbearable living like this, and they pull them into the United States. And then once you reach that critical number of over 100 million in this invasion, they will then propose that, well, for your family and friends back home who need, you need ease of travel, they need a better life, and so on and so on. And we can do all this better with a regional government than we can with a U.S. government. And they will have enough critical mass inside the country in order to effect that policy. That's the globalist plan that we're working towards. But what we're already doing is living under their policy, where they've made the right to migrate a human right, recognized the UN in 2018, and that now supersedes our sovereign right, thanks to the Biden administration and the open border ideologues who are in this government, who were never asked to be honest about their strategy in the campaign trail, who have bypassed the legislature and are implementing a strategy and a policy that not only did no Americans vote for it, because they weren't even given the opportunity, but most Americans don't support.
Now, she was called crazy for saying these things, something that she had sourced. She was deplatformed from Twitter, was it? Or
no, it was
wasn't
another.
she a CBS journalist? Like
she was a 60 Minutes reporter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think something about the Syrian, like she had a story that she was trying to break, and then they wouldn't let her break it, and then they ended up firing her and pretty much ostracized her for wanting to bring light to some subject. I thought it was Syria, but I can't remember.
She was at the Arab Spring. She was assaulted. I forget exactly what city it was. But yeah, she's a real boots on the ground journalist. She's earned her chops as someone who's willing to go into places most people are not willing to go.
So a high level of clearance at the United Nations and saying that this is a plan. And I saw a bunch of people in our chat, Ann Espinosa and others here watching live, saying this is all part of a plan. Let me know in the chat right now. Do you think that this is the plan? Do you think it is a plan to allow 100 million people from Latin America into the United States to basically completely alter the American landscape? We're already seeing it. I guess here's
the chat reminds us that it was in Egypt where she was assaulted. But I want to leave space for both for alternative viewpoints, because maybe it is sort of an intentional destabilization of people's lives. Possible, especially given that the politicians we have right now will not answer for it and don't seem to have any plans to take care of people. But then again, these are people. They're playing pawns with people's lives, parents and children. And, if you really wanted to, think about all the money that's sent to Israel right now. Israel, which absolutely does not need it. We marked COVID relief money for Israelis' army, which is functioning just fine, when we could absolutely stabilize the places where these people live instead of unstabilize them.
Well, let's get to that, because that's what I wanted to... go ahead.
Well, I just have a really quick theory. Like, what I feel like this is the woke ideology. I think the Democrats are very, very scared that they're going to lose their position of power that they currently hold. And I think these are voters. They're giving them money, they're taking them places, and I think maybe that they're doing more for them than we're being told, because that's a voter base that they will have. That's just my theory, because that doesn't make sense. Like, why would they want to disrupt the American cities like that for any other reason?
Well, you destabilize especially the middle class. This is the economic sort of domino effect, is if you destabilize people, you're able to grab more power over them. This is the dystopic way that this is led, right? That this falls into place.
Yeah, this is the argument, right? That the left needs new voters. And of course, hey, bring people in from other countries, right? We're a melting pot. So we need more voters. We need to destabilize and shake up these entire areas that are, Texas is a red state. Maybe not for much longer, right? That's the plan, like that.
But I don't want to fall into a category of like, well, we need to take care of our own first before other people, kind of like mentality of lack, that there's not enough for everybody. If there were actual government programs that could meaningfully place these people, we wouldn't have any problems with it. But we don't have that. And right now we do have poverty, and we do have politicians making decisions that will harm the poorest among us first. And so, I want to make it clear that I'm not at all anti-immigrant or any kind of, elitist.
Right. We're anti-illegal, and we're going around the policies that actually could help people and preserve a nation state. That's what I'm certainly in favor of. And so you have this whole destabilization of a region that has caused this.
Wait, you're arguing for the stabilization?
Let me just get to this, because I really want to get to this part of the story.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that the main reason we have this destabilization and we have this flood of people getting over these borders is because we fuck it up. We've screwed up all of these countries. Remember I said Nicaragua? This is a perfect example of us. The mainstream media will ignore key parts of the story, which is that the United States is to blame for almost all of these migrant movements into the United States. So you're stopping with Band-Aid solutions now that they're here? No, stop it before it ever happens. Why would anyone want to leave their country? They leave their country because it's war-torn and destroyed because the United States foments war and creates these destabilized governments. Exactly the case in Nicaragua. Sanctions, which is exactly, war and sanctions. So here's the BBC today. Here's the BBC of Nicaragua. U.S. immigration. They'd rather die then return to Nicaragua. Nicaragua under massive sanctions from the United States. Here's a headline. I mean, thanks, United States, for what you've done in Nicaragua with would you call them deadening sanctions or sanctions?
Oh, sanctions of mass destruction.
Sanctions of mass destruction. So you destabilize entire countries. And so this is why you look at where it all starts. Why would anyone want to leave their country? Like, why? If you live in Nicaragua, that's just your homeland.
You're saying that, but you are an expat, so.
No, but I'm saying if you go where you want to be treated best, right? Why would you leave your country? You leave it because it doesn't suit you anymore, because it's falling apart, right?
Yes.
And so these people are leaving because their country's falling apart. Look at Guatemala. Look at Honduras. So a majority of those people coming up through Mexico, I mean, they're coming from all of those countries that we've destabilized through our policies and sanctions. So the Biden administration is totally asleep at the wheel at this. President Biden went to Arizona. I don't know if you guys caught this, and last week, and then confirms what we all knew, that he doesn't give a shit about this one bit on the border crisis. A reporter asks him, why would you visit our state and then not visit the border? Watch his response.
State and not visit the border because there's more important thing going on. They're going to invest billions of dollars in a new enterprise.
There's more important things going on.
Enterprise is more important.
Yeah, they're going to do some investment deal at some factory.
Is that the Apple thing that's going on?
Yeah, it was the Apple event. It was the Apple, like they're going to.
And what really pisses me off is how they just say, oh, all we're going to do is just throw some sanctions on it. But people don't generally realize people die from sanctions because they can't get medication, they can't get insulin, babies can't get food. Like, it is an act of war, but they just sell it like, oh, it's not a big deal. We're not going to put boots on the ground. We're just going to sanction them.
Yeah.
Right. And look, I'm a compassionate person. Like, these people coming across the border, I would absolutely want to help them. We're all human, right? We all want to help other humans. But when we've created this crisis,
yes,
it's a humanitarian crisis. We've created this. In the same way that night after night on this show, we're calling out the bullshit that the United States does around the world. Hey, get out of Yemen, for crying out loud. You've created a genocide there. Hey, maybe get out of Syria. You've stolen their oil. You've basically created another genocide in Syria. Like, we just want to keep going on and on and on with this around the world.
And governments are planned around a certain number of people that they can maintain. People die, people are born, people immigrate. That has to be accounted for, or else we have an unsustainable society. You and I, who are expats, who have residency visa to live in another country, worked really hard for it because we realize that country has the right to set its rules. And we have to follow the rules in order to be guests and live there.
Right.
And that's not a racist thing to say. That's not an exclusionary thing to say. It's just the fact that a society cannot sustain itself if there's no basic accounting for who lives there and who it can sustain.
Poland, just as an example, Poland is collapsing right now. 1 million Ukrainians. No one's covering the story. 1 million Ukrainians are now in Poland. And talk to folks who just got back from Poland. We're talking to sources in the government in Poland and said it's a disaster. Like, they are collapsing. They can't take care of these people. It's a total disaster.
Well, Sweden has had an influx of immigrants from the Middle East that are coming from war-torn areas. And because Sweden offers full medical health care, a certain amount of basic income, that government is collapsing as well because they have basically opened their borders and given full-on, everything to people who come in there. And it's just, if you can't account for it, if you can't afford it, you cannot expect a government to sustain itself. It's just not possible.
So they've had a lot of parents.
And that's the sad thing about it, because there's so many countries over there that really want to help these people. It's like it's a humanitarian thing. But
sure.
It's like at some point you have to put on your own oxygen mask before somebody else's. You have to, otherwise you're going to be in the same situation.
Or maybe don't support terrorists in Syria, so that people can live there who like living in Syria, who want to be Syrian.
Yeah,
how about that?
Just think about because I saw someone write this in the chat a few minutes ago, super chat, said if the United States would stop the interventions, we would stop the border invasion. Think about that for a second. Just think about it it really is. If you think about this, like, if we actually stopped spending $800 billion a year on our defense budget and invading other countries and destabilizing the Middle East and Haiti, which we're doing right now, and Syria and Latin America, if we would stop doing that, this would end. Like, this would end. This wouldn't be the same problem. And then that $800 billion, we could work with other governments to figure out ways to, to help them, to bring clean water and bring other solutions to those countries. Instead, we use it for war and destabilization to enrich ourselves. So at the heart of all of this is
have our interventions, though, since like, post World War II, has the U.S. kind of like the CIA era, like all of our interventions, when has a single one of them worked or ended up making the place we went better? I honestly can't think of a single one. I mean, it wasn't creating the Mujahideen. It wasn't, I can't think of anything we were involved in where our intervention has actually had a net positive for the place we intervened. No, I can't think of one.
Drag queens in Peru are.
If anyone has an answer to Philip in the chat, let us know. Anybody? Bueller?
Well, and also, like, if you think about our foreign policy, like, think about if somebody were to strategically strike the United States, and let's say they were like, okay, we're going to strike Chicago and New York. So you think about all the little burbs and towns outside of those big cities. All those big city people would have to go somewhere. So they start going into these little areas. So that's what they're talking about with destabilization. They hit these targets, then all of these people are displaced that can't find anywhere to go inside their own country. So they have to go outside of it. And it's like, that's like a strategic thing that we do is destabilization. Like, we do that intentionally.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's, I think, what Laura Logan's talking about.
Correct.
It's the destabilization on purpose. So 100 million people come into the United States and forever alter the landscape and voting rolls and completely, force us into this new World Economic Forum based globalist agenda. So they have total control. They can hand out digital currency and they control everything that you do. But at the heart of this is human beings, right? Babies. They've had so many parents streaming across the border with little babies. They have no space for them. They have no place for them to sleep. And listen to CBS explain this with what they're dealing with at these border centers. Watch.
Overwhelmed, the Border Patrol has been busing refugees to Blake Barrow's homeless shelter in El Paso by the hundreds.
We had to resort to turning people away. There was no place else to put them. But if they come in with an infant, then we find some space somewhere.
On the floor if you have to.
Well, sure.
Babies.
I don't know if you guys have watched the Netflix series Swimmers. Have you guys seen that yet?
No.
I highly recommend it. It's about two Syrian swimmers who are forced to leave their country because they're going to perform in the Olympics, and they're forced to leave the war-torn Syria. And it's like this story of how they have to escape Syria, and there's a baby on these boats, and they're on this raft that these people sold them for like $2,000, and it's losing air across the water, and there's a baby. I mean, it's just I didn't want to watch it because I was like, oh, that doesn't look good, and then I watched it. I was like, holy cow, it's amazing, and it's a true story just to show you what those people go through to get out of those areas. It's
and
so
a lot of
sad.
times they get stuck in Istanbul. They get stuck in Greece, and they, are trying to get further and further west. And then when they get to the UK, where a lot of them want to go, they're not guaranteed asylum. They have to have some paperwork showing that they've been persecuted. Not if you're Ukrainian, you can.
Yeah,
see,
if you're Ukrainian, you just walk across the border.
But brown people absolutely are not guaranteed asylum in these places. And then what?
Yeah, they have
and
to
then
pay
they're
off the coyotes.
shipped off to where?
They have to pay off the coyotes. They have to pay off the mafia. They have to pay off the cartels. They have to pay off all these people in order to get there. And
it was showing.
Yes, yeah. I mean, not in the Middle East. I don't think they're.
It was showing they were like having they had to pay for buses, and then a couple times they got scammed. Like people didn't show up and dropped them off in the middle of nowhere, and then the police grabbed them. This whole way they're like spending money that they don't even have to potentially get. It's just like I could not wish that on my worst enemy, to have to go through something like that, and we're doing it to innocent children.
Yeah. Let us know your thoughts on this. We'll be watching this very closely. 6 days until this Title 42 expires, and we will be watching it every step of the way. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at Redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to Redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.